So we'll start with databases, and whenever we need data, we usually kept in what we call databases. So let's start discussing what is a database. So that's the first question. Now, simply we can say it's a collection of data. So if somebody asks you what is a database, we can simply say it's a collection of data, and it is organized so that you can easily check. Now, when you type something in the Google will index all the links, isn't it? So they put everything in the database, and then whenever search something, will try to give it you back. And remember, when you type something in the Google query, you will get millions of results within a fraction of a second. So this is possible with all the other technologies, but mainly the data part stored in databases, right? So it's a organized data collection. Yes, Malindu said saving data in organized manner. Yes, definitely. Right. So let's write down. So when it comes to databases, a database is a collection of data and information that is organized so that it can be easily accessed, managed, updated. A database is a collection of data and information. The data is a collection of data and information that is organized. So you have an order. We will discuss this. So they are organized that it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. Okay. So let's move to the next one. Okay, before that. Now, what do you mean by accessed? You can quickly search particular data. I told you, like in Google query, so you will get within a fraction of a second. So access is quite fast, right? Isn't it? And you can manage the data. Sometimes you should be able to, properly managing. You can use it again and again, right? You can update, mean you can change the data. So that should also be easy. But then again, when you talk about the databases, there are two types, right? Now, if you keep the data in a computer, then we call these databases are electronic databases. But traditionally we will use files, right? In books, we keep records. In your school, for example, we will maintain attendance records. So it will be a book. It's manual. But if you're using latest technology, maybe I can use an Excel spreadsheet to keep the data, right? Or else, in this lesson, we will learn we can actually create table of data. So, and I'll have the practical, so you will see. Right. So let's try it out. There are two types of databases: manual and electronic. So there are two types of databases, manual database and electronic database. Right. Now let's start looking at the manual database. Now, manual database is, I told you, we will use in table format. And for example, we can keep address book like your friends' names and addresses, or telephone directory where we can keep on name of a friend and then their telephone numbers. Right. So let's look at what a manual database is. Right? So manual database, we can say the data is stored in a tabular format, like a table. You put up a table, usually you will have name and address, right? Telephone directory, or even attendance records. If you are in a school, usually you have name, your index number, and then there are set of columns with the dates, and then they will put 1 and 0 to mark attendance. So all these we known as manual databases. Yes. Now that's about the manual. By we will write, we will put it to a book, right? So then this is discouraged nowadays. We try to have electronic format because there are a lot of disadvantages, right? Okay. Can you think of some issues, the problems with manual databases? If you try to keep data in a book, what are the issues you will face? Yes. You can type in the chat. What are the issues? Okay, time waste. Imashi said time waste. Okay, I will keep. Okay, time wasting. Yes. Prabhashi said, yeah, data will be unclear. Yes, depend on your handwriting. If you have bad handwriting, yes, it will be difficult to read. sometimes the doctors write prescription, even the pharmacist couldn't, recognize. Okay, Tivanka says you need a large space. Yes, you need large space. We have to fill the cupboards, right? If you go to school, there are a lot of places, the cupboards full of cupboards, right? Files are full of cupboard. Lack of security, yes, right? If you have a bad attendance, right? Somebody can steal the attendance book. All attendance records are gone, right? Maybe destroyed with the time, Dolina said. Yeah. You cannot keep every time with you. Manindu said increase efficiency or decrease efficiency. What do you think?
Decrease.
It should be decreased, right? It will take a lot of time, right? Now, let's say you want to take school leave certificate. You have to spend hours. If it is manual, like they have to find out your file, check your details. It will take a days, right? Whereas if it is an electronic information, yeah. So Taroshi said it's less efficient. Yeah, all these answers are correct. Good. And then, yes, insufficient storage space. Yes. Sometimes if you have only one cupboard, not enough space, maybe you have to throw it out. Or you have to have like couple of books, you have to keep it. Yes, accuracy also sometimes decrease because humans, we tend to make mistakes. So that could happen. Yeah, okay, good. All these are correct. So let me have my collections, right? Let's discuss. So the difficulties. When you create tables manually, there are a lot of difficulties we need to face, right? So let me put some. These are the some things that I have put. There are a lot of difficulties. Now, first one, when number of columns or records are high. Now, let's say you need a lot of columns. If it is a book, you have a limited space. Very difficult to create a table, right? Less efficient, less accurate. Then data protection is difficult. Safety is not there, right? Somebody can steal the book, whole data is gone. There's no way we can, retrieve that if somebody is already, handed it over. Otherwise, we are going to lose the data. Then inserting data, like let's say now if you are going to have something in alphabetically order in a book, keeping alphabetic order is very difficult, right? Sometimes you can have like A, B, C, and so on, telephone directory, and then you can keep your friends' names alphabetical order. But let's say if the book is filled, then now we have to insert. And updating means what? Even you have to cut it down, or maybe you have to use paste. Deleting is not possible at all, right? Maybe you have to tear off, right? Let's say you're angry with some of your friends, you want to remove them. It's not difficult, right? So you have written. Next one is searching. If you want to find out telephone number of a person, you have to go through each of the records, looking one at a time. Takes a lot of time. Sorting, it's very, very difficult. Yeah, keeping it sorted way. Maybe you have to rewrite. Creating copies, difficult. Either you have to photocopy it or you have to write it from beginning. And these are the last two ones. Getting only required data. Let's say you want to go on a trip and just searching where some of your friends near to that place. If you need a particular information, searching only that particular information is very, very difficult. And definitely, if you are doing this large scale, you need more manpower, right? In a school, we have work aids to, search files, bring in files, and then there are clerks, they keep the records, and then maybe there will be a vice principal who's responsible for keeping records in his school. Yes, so you need more manpower. But nowadays with these electronic databases, so it's a simple task. One person can, you know, have everything. Right, let's take down this. Once you finish, please let me know. Then I'll proceed to the next one. So because of previous issues that we have discussed, we now use what we call electronic databases, right? So we use a special piece of software to create database, to insert data, to update data, to change the, sort data. So it's more efficient. So this software we use with a special name called database management systems. In short, we will say DBMS. So let's look at some of the example software we will use to create electronic databases, right? So under that, we can talk about the very first one and what we use in this session as Microsoft Access. We use actually Microsoft tools to discuss the databases. But the problem with the Microsoft Access is you have to pay for it commercial, right? You have to pay for it. And then it's proprietary, right? I told you the term proprietary we use. The idea there is we really don't know how they have actually, developed these piece of software. It's closed source most of the time, right? But the Access is quite popular because since it comes with the Windows, right? Usually we will see this. But then again, there are like some open source alternatives. The second one is called MySQL. It's not free now. There are commercial versions, but there's a similar one for the MySQL because earlier MySQL was free and open source. Later, Oracle actually purchased Oracle in another database. Right. So later on, what has happened, people came up with those who work with the MySQL, they have created their own database, right, using the previous code. Now we will have what they call it, MySQL. It's called MariaDB, right? So we can say I will put a slash MariaDB, we call DB, right? So the MySQL actually comes with I told you like the Oracle actually purchased this one. There are many later software is available which I'm not going to discuss, but these are the alternatives that we can have. So MariaDB looks like this, the symbol, and then MySQL is the original one, right? So something similar to this. Right. Okay. So these are the logos. You can look for the details, but I will put under the free and open source. But now things have changed over the MySQL, but the MariaDB is the one now we extensively use. And then the Oracle one, the commercial versions, very successful in the business domain, right? We have Oracle. Oracle is a commercial software, which means, like I said earlier, you have to pay for it. So we can say it's a commercial and proprietary software. So that's Oracle. But there are many other quite popular software is also available. So Oracle usually, yeah, database looks like this, commercial one. And I told you like it's quite popular in business domain as well. And then we have base. In LibreOffice, we have the base. It's again free and open source. You already know. You can see. Right? So we can say LibreOffice, that's better. Otherwise, again, this is free and open source. So you see, most of the time we have this free and open source alternatives. We always, work with this. Right. Uh, there are others as well. I will just list them out, like MongoDB, quite popular name. So we'll have MongoDB and Neo4j4. I'm just put their links. I'm not going to talk about this. These are the newer ones, just for your information. Then in mobile databases, we have Firebase, right? So all these are like very new ones. Like this is just to know, like you should know there are many others. So you have MySQL, MongoDB, even SQL Server. I didn't mention this. SQL Server is a Microsoft. Then there are new software is coming as well. SQLite, okay, before forget, the single file database, quite popular, right? We call SQLite, one of my favorites. I tend to use MySQL, MongoDB, SQLite, I quite commonly used ones, but there are many others that you will see, right? If you learn more, you will get to know these databases. Not that difficult. For example, you can learn. Yonal says CloudKit, ArangoDB, Bigtable. Yes, there are many. I mean, if you look at Google Wikipedia entries, you will see there are hundreds of databases available. But I listed quite commonly used ones. Okay, now okay, let's have a small discussion. Okay, what are the advantages? Now we have seen the problems in manual databases, right? Can you think of what are the advantages of using this software? What do you expect? Why this? Hmm? Why electronic databases? What are the advantages of using database systems? Can you think of some? Yes, Imashi said data can be shared. Yes, you can easily share. Manually, it's not possible, right? Now you can, share, data easily with somebody. You can send it an email, you can WhatsApp, Telegram. Yes, high accuracy, Dolina said. Yes, definitely. More accurate than, manual. And then Imashi said efficient. Yes. Right. Uh, Easy to update copies. You can just say copy paste, right? Easy to update copies. Independence of data. Okay. We have not discussed in detail what this independent means, but yeah, I will keep it. This is Malindu's one. Then Khalindu said more security. Yes, we call data base could be encrypted. Encrypted means nobody can steal the data. Even if they steal data, they can't read the data, right? Prabha said data can be collect easily. Yes, definitely. We have electronic ways of collecting. Tarushi said more efficient. Yes, it's more efficient. Yes. Easy to obtain copies. Yes, that's already we have discussed. Um, credible. Credibility is there. Yes. And data consistency is there. You know, for example, consistent means, now let's say we have changed our address in a database. If your address appear everywhere or some more than one place, everywhere you need to make a change. This is difficult in manually. You cannot search, it's not efficient. So data consistency not will be there in manual. But when you have database electronic format, we can maintain data consistency easily, right? You can find files easily. Yes, when you just search facilities, they are there. You search it, a couple of seconds you can find. And then you need a smaller physical space. Yeah, for example, the data about the books available in library, you can keep it in a pen drive. Right. Proper management, Prabhashi said, you can arrange properly, minimize data loss. Everything is there. Right. Okay, so let's take down some of them. Right. Okay, we can say you can easy to create tables because the data, even in the electronic form, we are going to put into tables. I'll come to that point. More data you can store and you need small space. And access time it takes to access the data, it will be slow. Data can be found easily, so you can say it's more efficient. Within a couple of seconds, you can look for a particular data point. It's easy to copy. Yes, copying is easy. Security is high. You can restrict the data access for people. For example, general users can access the data. Managers can access the summary of data. And adding new records, updating existing record, deleting, it's easier with electronic database. Then searching and sorting is easy. Right? And then again, search is something, right? So data filtering, let's say according to done easy. For example, let's say we want to find out those who are around Nicovarity. Simply you can have a filter and you can easily get the outcome. And final 2 points, data independence is there, right? Easily shared. Yes, you know how easy nowadays with all these software we have. Earlier we didn't have this kind of facilities early days, but now everything is easy. Okay. The next thing that we need to know about the data types, right? Because we are going to store different types of data in databases. And then we can define some kind of a types, right? So let's take down data types. Okay, the first one, you can have text. Text mean like your name, your phone number, because phone number is not a number, right? Remember, you have 0 in the front, like 07777, 211, 411, and so on. Okay, so it's a text. Okay, so we have text. We have text. So the text means we have letters, numbers, and then we have special characters. So the first data type we call text. Text meaning like you can have any letter, you can have numbers, special characters. So for example, we can say a name or like national identity card number, right? We can say NID, national identity card number. We can say national identity card, right? And then phone number. So all these can be taken as text. We can see NID. Yes. Then you can have numbers. Now, phone number is not a number because you cannot add, multiply, and so on. So the second one, the values that we are going to use for calculations, if it is something like that, we can take them as numbers. Now, numbers means it goes from 0 to 9. These are the symbols. And it could be integer, that means whole numbers, right? Or it could be real. It could be real, right? Some examples are given here. So make a note that the numbers we use for calculations. Then currency, right? The currencies can be used to represent currency units. Yes, currency means some currency units. We can say, okay, example, yes, $10 or 1,500 rupees. The difference between the number and the currencies, precision, right? Real, we will discuss these ideas later on. We will learn some numbers we cannot represent as it is in the computer. Now, for example, if you add 0.1 and 0.2 in computer, you expect 0.3, but you are getting something very close to 0.3. Right. So that's about the currency. Then we have date and time. So this type we use to record the date as well as the time. So you can use others as well, but usually if you need the date and time, right, we can use this. We can have month like, let me say, today is 10th, 24th, 2021. And this is like now the time is 6:20 a.m., right? So if you want to represent the current date and time, you can, use that. Then we have a special data type called Boolean. Boolean can indicate things like true and false, two distinct values, right? If you need like something like yes and no, we can use these two values, true, false, two distinct values. So these are the basic data types. So what you need to remember is text, number, currency, date and time, and Boolean. So when you store the data in databases, usually you have to identify their data type, because depend on the data type, databases will take different sizes. Now, number of bits you need to store a text is larger compared to number of bits you need to store number. So that's why. So when you're storing, before you store, you will tell, okay, what data type you are going to use. So then space allocation is easy. So that's the reason why we define some data types, right? So depending on the data types, we have to then decide whether that particular data type is a text or a number or currency or a date and time or Boolean. We'll do some exercises later on. For the time being, so remember there are 5 data types. Next, I'm going to discuss some properties that you need. Like, let's say you are going to text like a name. If you have a browse in the internet, if you fill in form, sometimes you see that there will always be a limit, right? Limit for the name. Because otherwise you are going to, waste the space. You can't have unlimited space for a name. So you have to decide how much you are going to allow someone to enter his or her name. So basically size of the data, right? Now for example, I can say, okay, 80 characters. SMS, we have a limit, right? Likewise, when you are specifying the data, when you want to store, you have to specify what is the maximum number of characters you can have. And then things like this, the name, let's say name of a person, we have to decide whether we need the name in capital, or that means uppercase, or simple in lowercase. Then if you take a number, we need to decide whether you need an integer or we need a decimal form. If you're going to save a date, what format you are going to use? Like, are you going to use month, date, year, or date, month, year, and year, month in the name, like let's say October. So we need to decide, right? So then that is also one of these properties. And when you say time as well, time, when you specify, let's say time, are you going to use like 12-hour or 24-hour, or else are you going to include hours, minutes, and seconds, or only hours and minutes? So you have to look at like different types of formats, right? So you need to decide these one. These are known as field properties. Okay, so let's take down whenever you are going to create table. So when you are designing table, you need to have this, what we call the field properties. So what do you mean by field properties? The first one, right? The size of the data. Like I said, okay, entering a name. So the size of the data, what is the size of the data that you are going to use, that we need to decide. Right. So example is given here. Number of characters allowed for a name is about 80. But this 80 means including all the spaces as well. Right. So this is called as a field property. So whenever you talk about the text data type, you have to limit. Right. Second one, we discussed the formats. The formats actually based on the data you have, right? So we can use formats. What are the formats? Like, let's say example, let's take a name. Name could be capital, that means uppercase, or name could be simple, right? Lowercase. Again, you need to make this decision when you're going to save. Then we have number. Number, you can have whole number. We could say it's an integer, like 12, or you can have decimal, like 12.5. Then we have date formats. There are a lot of ways to represent the date. Right? So for example, we can say, okay, 24th of October, right? 2021. And the same thing we can represent in other formats as well. Right? So we can say, okay, usually we have US notations in the computer. So if you are following that one, we can say, okay, October 24th. Right? So that's 2021. And the time, how you're going to, have the time. Are you going to include seconds as well? Right now, the time is, yes, 6:38, and let's say 47. Or simply you can include only hour and minutes only. We can simply say, okay, this is 6:38. Okay. So these are the different ways. So first thing, you need to decide on the data type, whether it's a text, whether it's a number, and so on. Then the next one, you have to look for the field properties. Okay, let's look at some examples of data types. If you take an admission number, usually we can refer it as a text. Some cases you can take the number, but remember, number data type usually we use for whenever you use that particular data for some calculations. Okay. Yes, Senumi. Yes, text is the best one. For the name also, yes, for the name, what is the appropriate one? That's also text, right? Okay, should be text. About gender, yes, it could be text because male, female, or else sometimes you can think of as Boolean as well. Why true, false? So it depends on how you use it. Yes, it is also can be taken as a text, but Boolean is also a possibility because you have to. Then date of birth, yes, we will say date and time. When you use date and time both, right? Not like this. I will put a comma here. It could be text or Boolean, or I can say, oh, it's better now because if you put a slash, the best would be text, but it could be number as well. Gender could be text, but it could be Boolean as well. But date and birth, we will say date and time, not date, not time. We will take it together. Last one, address. Yes, definitely it should be text. Okay, let's take down this and I will give you a small exercise you to do. So here is the exercise. So you need to find the answers and then share with me in the chat. I want you to think about the data types for this. Admission number, you know what admission number is. Then date of admission, subject code, then ISBN number, department name, number of passengers. Right. So I'll stop for a bit early today. So take this as a homework and we will discuss answer in the next week.